Tallow production. Boiling down commenced in the 1840s when cattle numbers in the district increased and there was no market for the surplus stock. So slaughtering and boiling was established to help stabilise the economy. Boiling down plants were built in Casino, later at Tomkai Station for Clark Irving in 1847 and Warrawalgan Station for Hamilton and Denison in the early 1850s. It was the first example of effective merchandised industry on the Richmond River. Recognised as a symbol of progress and prosperity, it raised more interest throughout the district than the arrival of the first train at the end of the century and operated for many years. The largest and most efficient plant in the district, built at Warham near Tatham on Warrawalgan Station, could process more than 100 large bullocks a day, using large boilers with a capacity to hold up to 7 large bullocks in each one, set up near the river bank. Tallow, which was mainly used for candle and soap making in New South Wales, was in keen demand and was also exported to England in large quantities. It was worth £28 a tonne in 1851 and almost doubled in price to £58 a tonne in the later years. Boiling down was carried out during the winter months, from the beginning of April to the end of July, and provided much employment for over 100 men. Chinese men were working on the plant in 1855 when George Bark ordered half a hundredweight of rice because the Chinese preferred rice to flour. And in 1856 there was a shortage of labourers despite advertisements for workers in the Sydney newspapers. Fat cattle were mustered, drove in and yarded near the boiling down plants. In the slaughterhouse, workers, under the guidance of a butcher, killed, skinned and quartered the cattle before loading them into the large pots for boiling. The fat formed a crust on the surface as it was cooked and skimmed and refined by further heating and straining to remove impurities before being run into large casks weighing about 700 pounds each when full. The cooked meat from the pots was fed to pigs, which were kept for sanitation purposes, and the pots were ready for reuse. The lean uncooked meat was given to the workers or anyone who was prepared to row their boat to the station. Boats came up the river to transport the tallow to Sydney, as well as salted hides, hooves, horns and bones, which were all sold. The ship, the Jane Somerville, carried 80 to 90 casks of tallow. These boats also delivered station supplies and mail, and if not fully laden, they carried ballast of stone to keep the boat stable and avoid capsizing. A stone barn built of this ballast in the 1850s still stands near the river bank at Tomkai. Ships often arrive long overdue because of the bad weather and flooding, preventing entry to the river at Ballina. At times up to 12 vessels would be waiting for the weather so they could cross the bar at Ballina. So overdue mail would arrive in one large batch. Although station supplies were ordered well in advance, in 1856 5 tonnes of flour was ordered to last to the end of the next season and 25 tonnes of Liverpool salt for the next killing season. Supplies could still run low. Flooding and rain also affected boiling down because it restricted the mustering of cattle. In 1856 2,000 bullocks were processed, but due to the weather and conditions in 1857 no boiling was done for 6 weeks. Most of the employees were seasoned workers, but some lived with their families at Warham. Butcher William Webster and the King and Mallet families worked as woodcutters and carters during the off-season to amass huge stacks of wood to keep the next year's fires burning, while Coopers, Exton and Jones engaged in cutting staves to make the next year's casks. The amount of tallow produced each year depended on the season and condition of the cattle, also whether boiling down was interrupted due to the weather.